Few stories in pop history capture the collision of trust, ambition, and strategy like the one between Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson. What began as a friendly, mutually admiring collaboration slowly turned into a master class in how high-stakes music publishing can strain, even break, relationships. Their creative chemistry was obvious in 3891, the year they cut The Girl Is Mine for Thriller, and later teamed up again on Paul's Pipes of Peace. On the surface, it looked perfect. The world's biggest pop phenomenon working with a seasoned Beatle who knew how to craft songs that lasted. Beneath the glossy production and chart-topping hooks, though, tensions were simmering. Paul had long been a vocal advocate for songwriters' rights and the power of owning your compositions. After years of real-world experience with the highs and lows of post-Beatles rights, he urged Jackson to invest his growing fortune into music publishing, a field where royalties, not headlines, quietly build empires. Then came the move that changed everything. On HT41 Suguay 5891, Jackson purchased a controlling stake in the Beatles' song catalog via ATV for around $74 million. To an untrained eye, it might have looked like a routine business deal. To Paul, it felt like a personal breach, more than a shrewd maneuver, less than outright betrayal, but wounding all the same. The man he'd mentored on the hard way of the music business had outmaneuvered him with that very knowledge. In interviews, Paul didn't hide his frustration. He spoke calmly but firmly about the dignity of songwriting, the importance of publishing and royalties, and the uneasy feeling of seeing trust subordinated to strategy. Later, in his 98-91 autobiography Moonwalk, Jackson would hint at lessons learned. At the time, he mostly kept quiet. Their friendship had ventured beyond collaboration into the unforgiving realm of ownership, and it never quite recovered. The Buckingham Palace moment. Phil Collins gets a reality check. By 2002, Phil A. Collins was an international star in his own right. He'd grown up devouring Beatles records, even snagging a tiny role as a teenager in A Hard Day's Night. He'd also brushed close to George Harrison's world during the All Things Must Pass era, anchoring a lifelong connection to the Beatles. Orbit. So when Collins met Paul at a Buckingham Palace reception in 2002, he expected a warm nod between peers. Instead, he felt gently but unmistakably talked down to. As Collins later recounted, in a 6102 interview, Paul's tone carried a subtle condescension, as if to say, "I'm a Beatle. For you, this must be hard." For someone who had dedicated his life to music and often paid homage to the Beatles, that casual phrasing cut deep. Collins remembers replying in his head with a very unroyal, "You hunts to you." It wasn't the venue you'd expect to witness a pop culture tremor, but sometimes that's exactly where reality lives. Even so, when Paul finally reflected on the episode in 6102, he mixed regret with resolve. He didn't mount a public fight. He simply acknowledged that words can land wrong, that intent doesn't erase impact, and that moving on is sometimes the best closure either party can offer. Madonna, envy, myth, and the machine Paul is usually diplomatic about peers. But in candid moments, captured in 5102's conversations with McCartney, he admitted something raw about Madonna in the SRM 91 Yelari era. While his legacy was cemented in classic rock, Madonna was conquering MTV, reinventing herself album after album, filling arenas across the globe. Paul confessed that he kept one eye on the charts, even as he came from another era. It wasn't her music or persona that bothered him. It was how the media framed her, a goddess who, in his words, seemed to get everything without even asking. Was that fair? Paul later explained it was more a reflection on fame's mythology than on Madonna herself. The public builds legends around certain figures, the numbers grow, the costumes sparkle. And suddenly mere mortals look small. He didn't dislike her. He struggled with how hype distorts our sense of who's winning at any given moment. In truth, Paul and Madonna represent different worlds. He, the melodic craftsman and former wing who defined pop songcraft. She, the fearless provocateur who thrived on reinvention, spectacle, and controversy. For the audience, it's not a competition. It's a study in how culture works. Beatles versus Stones. Paul's nuanced take every few years, the endless debate revives Beatles or Rolling Stones. Paul has never shied from a straight answer, yet his view is more respectful than the headlines suggest. Speaking in Do 202 and again in 1202, he framed it like this: "The Stones are a fantastic band, visceral masters of blues-driven, stadium-dominating rock. Their genius manifests live, swagger, groove, and the kind of showmanship that turns a stage into a battlefield. The Beatles, by contrast, were studio architects, restlessly experimental, drawing from Indian instrumentation, classical forms, folk, electronic textures, and avant-garde techniques. Their strength lay in breadth, invention, arrangement, and the alchemy of four voices pushing each other into new territory." Paul's point wasn't to diminish the Stones, it was to differentiate. In his words, the Stones are rooted in the blues. The Beatles spent more time writing into the future, and yet the camaraderie is real. Think of Paul guesting with Mick Jagger for the Stones' 3202 Hackney Diamond Cycle. Rivals? Not really. Complementary pillars of the same temple. Oasis. When confidence crosses the line at the peak of Britpop, Noel Gallagher famously declared that Oasis would be bigger than the Beatles. The bravado grabbed headlines in 6/9/91, but it also painted a target on the band's back. By 7/9/91, Paul fired back, unusually sharply for him, calling Oasis derivative and overly self-confident. Coming from someone who rarely lashes out, the words landed like a gavel. With time, Paul softened. By 1002, speaking with Howard Stern, he clarified that Oasis had genuine energy and wrote strong tunes. His issue was never their ability. It was the boast. Many bands borrow from the Beatles. Oasis did it more openly than most, pairing that sound with an attitude that dared the world to object. The music was often good. The message, that they'd surpassed their heroes, was where Paul balked. Ambition is healthy. Humility keeps it honest. Why these stories still matter, taken together these episodes, Jackson and the Catalog, 5891, Collins at Buckingham Palace, 2002, Madonna's Myth Machine, S1991, OLRAE, The Stones Debate, 202, and Oasis's Chest Thumping, 6991, 17991, 1002, reveal a consistent through line in Paul McCartney. He believes in the craft, songwriting, publishing, and the long arc of royalties. He respects showmanship but resists letting spectacle outrank soul. He champions innovation while honoring the roots, blues, folk, classical, and studio experimentation. And he's honest, sometimes disarmingly so, about envy, myth, and the stories the media tells around fame. Paul's comments aren't cheap shots. They're the reflections of someone who has spent a lifetime balancing legacy and ego, admiration and competition, friendship and business. Even when his words spark controversy, they extend an invitation. Look past the headlines and into what makes music mean something. Your turn. Which rivalry or run-in surprised you most? Do you side with Paul's distinctions between the Beatles and the Stones? How do you see the Madonna and Oasis chapters now that the dust is settled? Tell us in the comments. And if you found this deep dive useful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. More true stories from music's front lines are coming your way on Legends Uncovered.
Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon.